welcome to today's webinar, Handicraft Supporting Sustainable Livelihood. My name is Tanushri Majumdar and it gives me immense pleasure to host this impeccable webinar for all of you today. First of all, please allow me to welcome our participants, members of participants, guests, dignitaries, and speaker. IIM Calcutta Innovation Park aims to recognize, reward, and support a large number of early stage students to solve large scale problems in India, which is in line with the vision of social economic development of India. One of the key objectives of IIM Calcutta and IIM Calcutta Innovation Park is to help unleash entrepreneurial energy of India's development. Since post-COVID-19 pandemic crisis, they have put around 400 million Indians of informal workforce at risk of falling deeper into poverty. Similarly, the handicraft industry has faced this pain really well to accumulate severe cash crunch. The timing could not have been worse. A fallen economy, unemployment, reduced spending, the pandemic and subsequent lockdowns have a devastating impact on the handicraft sector. Artisans and weavers are the third largest segments amongst the poor. Most of their productions, which could be the reasons the visibility coming back to normal, the new normal to the normal situation scenario. We would like to understand your thoughts and on these people, how we can support them and the livelihood can be enhanced. Today, let's unveil the story of power, greed, perseverance, patience, and strong affirmations of having a never say die attitude of these spectacular personalities who show this with courage, leadership, and compassion. Let's welcome our speaker for the day. Today, we have with us Ms. Priya Krishnamoorthy, founder and CEO of 200 Million Artisans. Priya is a MS Arts and Administration from US University of Boston. Is certified into cultural economics from International Summer School Cultural Economics. She also has a postgraduate diploma in arts and management. We have with us Madhura Dutta, director Banglanatak.com. She is a well-known name in the culture and development space. She is a development sector professional and a freelance writer working in the rural India for more than 2 decades with NGOs, UNESCO, and CSRs, and specializing in culture-based sustainable development. We have with us Ankit Kumar. He is the co-founder and CEO at Shoegaro Fashions Private Limited. Shoegaro. Ankit is an Acumen Fellow and a social entrepreneur working to recreate respectable and livelihood generation opportunities for underemployed footwear artisans through his initiative, Karigar Mandi. We also have Kong Rymbai. She is a successor of Kong Prissila Rymbai, who is a proprietor of EriWeave. She is a school teacher and a handloom weaver. With a team of 5 women, she started her journey impacting awareness to other women on how they can living by learning of saving. And lastly, we have with us Mr. Suman Mukhopadhyay. He is a director of Banglanatak.com, a social enterprise headquartered in Kolkata. He has more than 22 years of experience in development engineering and financial sectors. He has worked with departments of MSME and T, Government of West Bengal, in developing an entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state. He headed unique business ideas contests like Agiye Bangla projects, the first ever government-sponsored Business India reality show on TV in West Bengal, and Smart 50, the largest startup contest in India organized by IIM Calcutta Innovation Park in association with DST. So, not doing further ado, let's quickly jump into the session. Over to you, Suman, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
And take it from here. Thank you.
So, I don't know. I'm getting an echo. So, are you guys okay? Can you hear me well? Tanushri, can you hear me? Okay. All right. Good. So, sustainability and the craft sector. So let's say I remember there was a document, the approach paper, which was probably prepared when Wilferson was World Bank president way back in 1999 or 98. So the paper was adopted, and UNESCO had actually prepared the paper, and World Bank kind of adopted that paper. Till that time, culture was primarily on the periphery, and all of us would appreciate that World Bank is that way kind of appreciated as the policy leader, and in terms of at least if they recommend that certain policies may be taken very seriously by the rest of the globe. So that's how it happened. But unfortunately, come to think of it, whether it is 98 or 99, I don't exactly remember. But in between, quite a few number of years have passed, but we don't seem to get the kind of foothold that this sector should have achieved, particularly in the developing country, because this is where at least we get to hear that a large number of people are still associated with in the culture sector. So cultural micro enterprises and cultural practitioners, but you don't get to see that. So good that we have a very interesting set of the panels today. There are people who are fortunately practitioners, or they're actually entrepreneurs. So, and I'm very happy to see at least this is don't get me wrong. This is something which is unfortunately in India at least got gender biased. So at least Ankit, you saved the day for us because this is something which is so unfortunate. I don't know why it has happened, but last 8 years, I've been seeing this even the contests wherever I go, even the craft sector contest, or even for that matter, Smart 50 for that matter. All the participants who could actually make it to the top 3,000, those who remotely connected to craft, I think there were 73 of them, and all of them were women. So yeah. So Ankit, thank you. So now I would actually what I would do is see this sustainability. Obviously, COVID actually has tested the resilience capacity of this sector significantly, and pretty much it has tested the resilience capacity of the micro and small sectors pretty much across the domain. It really doesn't matter. But I think this particular sector has taken a significant hit. So my first request to all of you, let's say, the first few minutes, if you can, each one of you, I would probably request first that Ankit, if you can talk about it, and then subsequently any one of you, but I don't want to kind of create a sequence, but all of you, all the panelists, I would want your thinking on this. What have you been thinking, and what is that you practiced? What is that work in terms of resiliency in your own sector? How did you see this resiliency pattern evolving, and things that work, things that did not work, anything that you have suggestion in terms of a policy and things like that. So particularly from the enterprise angle, if you can help us understand what's going on there. So Ankit, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Suman. So thank you very much for inviting me to this forum, and I'm delighted to share this forum with so much dignified people who are doing such a great work, which I have heard from other people, and I'm happy to meet Priya and Madhura and Rymbai. So I have heard a lot in our forums in Acumen India, where whenever there is something related to livelihood and other things are there. So see, after basically, as you said, one thing I would like to clarify that it's not a clarification, like a small story at how I came into this sector, and I started providing my business started providing livelihood to these footwear artisans. We are based at Agra, and you all must be aware that Agra is footwear hub. Agra meets the 60% demand of domestic footwear of India. So I used to be a brand consultant, and I used to give brand consultancy to various footwear manufacturers in Agra, domestic brands. And there I used to meet while studying their brands, and like what I have to do to promote these brands, what branding should I do, so for that I used to meet various people in their factories, and there I met few laborers who are working there in these factories in a very bad condition, who used to be who are these footwear artisans, and they used to have their own small micro enterprises around a decade or 2 decades back. And this art is in Nagra. This art is around 400 years old. It is there since the time of Emperor Akbar. So uh, because they belong to mostly backward communities and all that, so they have seen that. The good thing is this: they are not educated at all. Um, this may not have resemblance with other people in other craft sectors, but in footwear, what I've seen that these people are very enterprising kind of people. They have some kind of enterprising skills in them, and they try to capture any opportunity if they can get to regain their lost pride which they had. So few artisans approached me and they asked me like whatever they call it here, like in our local setup they call it ki Seth hai, Lala hai. So these words are used here. So they said that if whatever you are doing for our Seth, can you do it for us also? So I did not know at that time. I did not know. I was new to Agra also. So I'm living here for past 11 years. So this was around 2017-18, and two artisans asked me that if we give you some kind of footwear we make at our household unit, so can you sell them also online, and can you do some kind? Can you bring us some business? So I asked them like why they are saying, what is their background. So then I came to know about their story that around a decade or 2 decades back, they used to run their own small cottage kind of. They belong to a cottage industry. So I registered a brand which was named Shoegaro, and I got few. I gave them few designs, and I was means it was a surprise to me that those designs sold very well on Amazon and Flipkart and all other marketplaces. So I saw a great business opportunity there, and so I shifted from consulting to this building my brand Shoegaro. And in this process, what I saw that I was able to re-establish uh, those closed units which were there of these artisans. And in this way, we established a model where now we incubate small units of these footwear artisans who have lost their jobs, who have migrated, or they are doing working as laborers in construction sites. So earlier we have to find them, but now because of the word by mouth publicity, we have many nominations with us, so with whom we can work. So this is how we reached here, and when we saw that our business is giving them respectable jobs, because in Agra, I always believe that in handicraft should be there. Little bit mechanism is needed. Good capitalism is needed. I am never against capitalism, but one thing of a few industrialists which uh, which I didn't like at all is like when I approached these people who have employed these laborers, and I asked them that, and I told them while discussion I'm doing something for them, this sort of thing. So the reply which I got from these industrialists here in Agra is that if you will empower these people, then who will work for us? Factories will close down. So these are the things I was really surprised to hear, because I believe that if our society grows from the downwards, everyone will grow. It moves upward. So this is a brief story. What I wanted to share, that how we started, and I converted our business into a pure social enterprise, and now everything is dedicated, and our all policies are around creating livelihood for these artisans. So and you see, COVID has created a lot of disruption in this industry, and I have seen that, and I would say that in Agra, one third artisan units have been closed, whether it is artisans or medium enterprises also. At least one third have closed down, and these artisans have opted other professions like selling vegetables, fruits, or uh, starting. They went back to some villages where they can get some employment under Manrega and all those things. So this was a very bad phase which we and all these artisans have been through. Uh, but these artisans are what I have found that because of their enterprising nature, they help us, we help them. together during the last year, especially after the second wave. So after the first wave of COVID, we restarted our business and we are doing good. In January, February, and March, we did a very good sales in March, and immediately second wave uh, impacted. So after that, what we have to change our business model also. Like what we did is earlier we were a B2C and D2C brand, and now we converted ourselves to a B2B brand because lots of investment we have put in after the first lockdown, and again in the second lockdown everything went to zero, and so we have changed our business, and we are seeing good returns in after converting our business to B2B model. And one problem I may Suman, I may not be exactly answering what you may have asked.
Doesn't matter, but I think, this is what I mean in terms of your experience of, because sustainability is what you're referring to, and COVID is what kind of disrupted the whole thing. So things that work for you, obviously there was a disruption. I think that narrative is good enough. We obviously are not looking at very technical, perfect contour answer, but yes, your experience is what we are keen to hear. So absolutely fine. Yeah.
So Priya, I always used to admire the model of Amul, and I always think that this kind of model can be implemented in handicraft sector, and because these in our sector, footwear artisans always they work, either their whole family works together or they work in groups. So I initially what I have seen that there is reluctance in male footwear artisans to come together, form a self-help group, but female footwear artisans are easy to come together and form a self-help group. So what we have seen is how we were able to help them is we have formed, like where there are various units. So we have clubbed units together. We have COVID, they were ready to come into groups. They were ready to come together and share their all resources, because we are also not having too many orders to give them. So the idea which we shared with all the groups of artisans which we had, and of course we received some external financial help also from various agencies. So we employed those help in getting footwear manufactured, and we stored them as in our inventory in our warehouse, so that they can get some work and their morale should not go down. And in this way, they after COVID, they could only beat this thing in the like I think in the last quarter, or from July till December. It was a tough phase for July, August, September. From October, market started reviving back. So in the starting 3 months, we were able to survive with our artisans because we all came together, we formed groups. We gave orders equally to everyone, and no one was like opposing us. Like earlier, we are getting this orders and that, and we have our own machine pools. Someone is having some machines, someone is having other machines. So we combined everything together. We formed a self-help group kind of entities here in Agra, and we collaborated with Central Footwear Training Institute. So it's a central government institute here. They helped us in getting some government programs, some benefits. Then after this phase only, we got help for getting them, these artisans, some kind of credit, because they have formed a group, a closed loop. So because they are getting all kind of things, now they are motivated to work together in groups in the form of self-help groups. So this is what I realized, that in a craft sector, if we can follow the model of Amul, forming a kind of a cooperative, not a very large one that 100 and 200 people are working, but a small 20-25 people, and sharing their resources. Government is also ready to help, and we can also get help from the private sector. I have seen that my credit partner was very much convinced that yes, these two senior leaders, senior artisans are coming together and combining their all resources, so I can give them credit now. And it's a closed loop here that also involved for taking care of the business. So this was not happening before COVID. Trade partner was not ready to come. But after COVID, when they come and they joined all their resources, so we can also provide them credit. And now we are seeing a good growth in business because they learned how to work together in form of small cooperative.
Great. That's interesting. So what I'm hearing is, one is, of course, working as group, and then subsequent institutional linkages, either through market or through some kind of a credit linkage, is what probably has worked to kind of strengthen these groups back into business, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now I would come to Priya. Priya, if you can please share your experience as to how things have shaped up and how things are working rather post-COVID, during COVID, in your experience, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So once again, thanks for inviting me here. Really glad to see a lot of fellow entrepreneurs and fellow entrepreneurs who have taken our survey. Really thankful to all of you for taking the time. I can't tell you how important this is for the entire sector as a whole. But let me also start by saying that, my journey into this, so I'll call myself a creative first. So I'm a creative person. And 200 million artisans is about fighting for creative people. And this journey didn't begin for me, at least in 2020. I used to be a journalist and I used to interview a lot of creative people back in CNN, IBN and those days. And I was talking to musicians and I was talking to artists and filmmakers and so on and so forth. And suddenly the question that would keep coming back to me over and over again was, oh, all these guys are doing such amazing work, but where is the ecosystem to really support and help them become enterprises, or to even think of self-sustainability? Because nobody gave them money. There were no enterprises. There was no ecosystem for creative people. So the question really started back in, I think, 2007. And of course, I was part of the big corporate rat race. Somewhere I felt I needed to quit it all. And that's when I moved into arts management. And I studied in Chennai under Dakshin Chitra. I worked with the Crafts Council of India. Geeta Ram was my mentor at that time. And she basically sent me to Orissa at that point for in the middle of a, blazing summer, and Orissa summers are not fun. So, right in the middle of Rath Yatra and, all of that, rat infested homes or, one little guest house there. And this was so new to me as a, urban person going and living in a village. And I spent almost 2 months in Orissa documenting, how artisans were basically passing on their knowledge to the next generation. And that's really where it stuck me, because first I went to Geeta and I said, no, market access, Geeta, we need to provide market access. That was my first sort of, spiel to her. But when I spent time in the villages, I realized that there's a larger problem at hand, that we as Indians do not value what we have. And that also filters down somewhere in the villages. When people like us stop valuing what we have, when we take all these things that we have, the creativity, the culture, the skills, the knowledge, all that for granted, how do we expect the artisan on ground to value what he has? So that was, I think, from my first sort of learning, aha moment. And thereafter, I came to Bombay and I worked with a gallery which was, hosting exhibitions after exhibitions. So I must have managed about 200 exhibitions of 200 craft-based entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs. And every person would come to me and say, Are Priya, yaar, we don't know how to grow. How do we find more money? How do we scale? How do we find resources? Yaar, koi marketing kare. It's just these everyday issues that nobody was solving for. And I kept thinking, and I was also like in my early 20s, I was part of this whole social impact, when Dasra was coming up and Unlimited India was coming up, and I was part of that ecosystem, and everybody was talking about how poverty solutions and sanitation solutions and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, but where is the ecosystem, the funding, the mentors? All that network and community for creative people who are running creative businesses, who are working either with artisans, who are artists, who are filmmakers, fashion designers, jute ka kaam kar rahe, whatever it is. So, and again, I got frustrated in Bombay and I was like, yeah, if Bombay doesn't have answers after all this time, maybe the West will have answers. And of course, being the South Indian I am, it is but natural that you have to go to the US, you have to check that little tick box and all of that. So I said, Naini, I will go to the US and I will study. So inevitably, I got the Fulbright Fellowship, and I said, "Arey, in US mein answers honge sabke paas." Turns out they also didn't have answers, because essentially we as a global community we do not value creativity. Our parents, and perhaps if you are parents yourselves, you will be the first one telling your child, beta, creative career mat lena. It's okay if you do it as a side hobby. उसका career मत बनाना, because you can't be self-sustainable. तुम घर नहीं ले सकते हो, you won't be able to buy a गाड़ी, बंगला, मकान, get married, all of that. That is essentially the perception problem. And that perception problem also filters down to investment. It filters down to policy. It filters down to how we teach our kids in schools. So this is a much larger issue than a COVID issue. And it has been going on since our independence, because we haven't created policies and supportive infrastructure for our creative enterprises, because India is a land of creativity and culture that we have forgotten somewhere. वो घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर हो गई है हमारे लिए. And that is really where the problem comes. The second thing, coming back to, Boston innovation ecosystems, spoke all the language. I was studying arts management, but art schools, they are teaching you to talk about love and fresh air and community building and all of that. And then I got a chance to work with MIT Solve. And MIT Solve is supporting enterprises and social enterprises, and they are talking about things like SDGs, climate change, gender, all the big words that none of us are exposed to. So suddenly I was like, all this padai was nothing for me, because basically what the world is looking for is something else altogether. So when 200 million artisans, honestly, 200 million artisans was an accident. I just wanted to be a researcher because I like asking questions, and I'm inherently a journalist. And when I was sitting in Boston, all these enterprises that I had worked with back in India, they reached out to me saying, Priya, we can't pay our artisans. Yeah, please help us do something. And it started with, helping with one fundraiser for somebody else, one fundraiser here. And there were a lot of Indian women and diaspora in Boston who were active supporters of saris, of, cultural products from India, and they really missed India. So, there was also, they wanted to give back. So, and even then I realized that after all these years, we are still competing with each other. Nobody wants to share information. Why is it that we don't have a website that actually, talks about the enterprises that are working on ground? It's not just a few nonprofits that are working on ground. There are multiple enterprises like the ones on the forum today who are working on ground. Why are we not telling the stories of the younger generation in the craft sector? And that for me was a big sort of, a point, and it kind of validated everything that I had researched in Boston and otherwise. So 200 million artisans basically emerged as a COVID response platform to share information for anybody who wanted information. And all we were hosting is fundraisers at that time. And we must have gone and spoken to so many funders at that time saying, yeah, why don't you support the sector? Great impact, women inclusion, ye, wo, vagara. And they all turned around and basically told us, all this is wonderful, Priya. I mean, we are, very enthused by your, your passion for the sector, but where is the data? You claim that the sector is X. You claim that the sector is Y. You claim there are so many enterprises working in the sector that are potentially, scalable, growth ready, all that. But the only person we've heard of is Fab India. So there is again a perception problem. And I was like, oh my God, we have no data on the sector. We don't even know how many enterprises exist. We don't know how many enterprises work with how many artisans. All this data has not even been consolidated. Government data hasn't been consolidated. And I will agree with Ashok Chatterjee, who has been one of the biggest champions of data collection in our country for time immemorial. It is time that we start numbers, the fresh air argument about the craft sector. That exists. The fact remains that there are enterprises like Ankit and many others sitting here actually wanting to build responsible businesses, not extractive businesses. We are also building a space. And I'm doing this as much for enterprises like Ankit, for other enterprises who are working in this sector, as much as I'm doing this for myself, because I don't want to become an extractive business. It is as simple as that. That is why we started with research, and which is where Business of Handmade, the first research came out. We got funded 2 lakhs. If you look at the website, and I will share the website, that doesn't look like a 2 lakh product because all of us volunteered. Nobody took money on that research. And we said, we will tell stories. A lot of enterprises came to us and said, "Arey, but ye sab to jante hai log." This is a perception building exercise. We need to go out to the world. Our funders are sitting, they listen to, it's the same problem, right? बाहर अगर लोग बोलेंगे कि हमको योगा करना है, तो हम यहाँ पे योगा करेंगे. योगा तो है ना यहाँ पे. But somebody in the US will tell us to do yoga, we will do yoga, na? That is what we are doing right now. We are basically telling the entire world that this sector matters, the enterprises in this sector matter. And that is why you need to listen to every story that we share. This is to make sure that the policymakers are listening, the investors are listening. Somewhere, if there is a domino effect, we hope that there will be some change that will happen on ground. And that is why we are doing and leading with research. The second research, which is currently ongoing, was supported by, research never gets supported in India, unfortunately. So it was supported by a US-based organization, but so many, we have over 6 partners in India alone. ICA, Creative Dignity, World Fair Trade Forum, you name it, everybody understood that mapping the needs of enterprises is critical. And why enterprises, I'll also say, while we have a name called 200 million artisans, which is actually a call out to policy action, because officially there are only 7 million artisans that the government mapped. But if you read, Rana Bank, Rana Gupta from Yes Bank, Harvard, and a couple of other places, informally, people have said that there are over 200 million people dependent on craft for livelihood. Now, in a country of 1.3 billion, 200 million people, if they're dependent on craft for livelihood, it's a policy and an investment issue. We can't ignore it. There is no time to ignore it. Secondly, unless during COVID, first phase, second phase, I remember, I think more critically right now, because I can't tell you how many calls I have fielded from enterprises who said they are going to shut down, that they could not pay their artisans, they could not pay themselves, and I didn't know what to do. My team, we were volunteering. We were not getting paid. I don't know how many team members of mine must have called me saying, it is impossible to listen to this, Priya, what can we do? And that's how we ended up running the auction, because we were like, yeah, how can we raise money? Where did the money come from? Because the money was going to, oxygen tanks in Delhi. Nobody was actually dealing with the rural areas. Nobody was talking about the rural areas at that time. No money was coming into the rural areas of India. Artisan sector was last in the line. And which is why one thing we realized, we have to support enterprises, because if one enterprise dies, he or she will take 25 artisans with them who will become Uber drivers or who will become, Manrega workers. That also happened during COVID. Which is why for us, it is critical that the small to medium enterprises, the nano, micro, small to medium, that is the landscape in the artisan economy. It is the SGBs, it is the small businesses. Those businesses have to be supported to grow. And it is unrealistic for us to also expect them to become unicorns. This is not the time of unicorns. Unicorns have failed across the world. What we need are healthy, self-sustainable, responsible businesses. And that is what 200 million artisans is advocating for. This survey is towards that. We have over 450 people in the country, brands who have taken the survey. And this is historical because nowhere in the world has this need of enterprises, not artisans, but enterprises being mapped. The information that we get from this survey really is not only going to inform how investors need to work, how policymakers need to work, what are the next steps, not just in India. It is also, funders have told us categorically, once your survey comes out, we will also design our strategy for Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. Now tell me, should India not lead the way in a conversation like this? I'll end at that.
Thank you, Priya. No, that's interesting. I have quite a few questions for you, but probably I'll get back to you once we are done with the rest of the panel. So I'll come to you, Madhura. Now that you had seen kind of both sides of the aisle that way. So one, of course, is the practitioner where you have worked with artisans to get them connected with the market. and help them form enterprises, etc. And you have also seen the consulting space. You have also worked with policymakers like UNESCO, etc. So tell us, help us understand this this challenge of sustainability, enterprise sizes, the problem of resiliency, etc. And particularly the way that you have experienced during COVID. What in your mind has worked? What in your mind could have been done better, and things like that. So if you can share your experience. I think you are on mute, Madhura. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Suman, and it's a pleasure being on this platform, and great to hear from Ankit. And specifically, I would like to also tell Priya that your social campaigns are fantastic, and that I had the opportunity of heading ICA, and I'm on the governing board now because you mentioned, and I have interacted with you indirectly but closely with 200 million artisans. So you have a fantastic platform. So coming back to what you asked, Suman, I'll just move a step back to say that my background is development sector, and neither anything to do with creative or hardcore business. And my background is sustainable development, social science, and then I have a PhD, and then I have 20 years of practitioner work in the field. And I had the opportunity of working with policy. I had the opportunity of working and designing and strategizing programs. And I also had the opportunity of working on ground directly with the people. So in this entire perspective, for me, it's really a big gamut to really address. But I will try to just pinpoint a few things with respect to the questions that you asked. And if you need me to expand on anything, I'm happy to do that. So I'll start with COVID. Once COVID hit, and once this whole pandemic situation started, there have been a lot of challenges which we are all aware of, which I will not get into the details, but I will like to address the policy aspect of what we are seeing now, which is being talked about more and more in these kinds of policy level or thinking social webinar kind of programs, which is very important, is that what are we looking at in terms of empowerment, welfare, and doing good for the industry, say crafts, in this in this respect. And what is it that we are trying to look at when we are talking about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, sustainability, etc.? I think that is a core thing that we need to understand, because even though we in the development sector have been talking about collective resilience, collective negotiation, well-being, quality of life, local economy to a very large extent, and has been advocating for it for probably the last 15, 18, 20 years, it has really not been heard in the manner that it has been heard today post-COVID and during COVID. So expanding on that will probably take another whole sort of session. But what I would like to say is that the fact that there is a huge opportunity from what we just heard from Priya and Ankit, and we keep hearing from others, and all the movements that have happened with Creative Dignity and others, other large platforms who have come forward voluntarily to help the sector during COVID, is that it is talking about those indicators, it is talking about those well-being which have been very much in the development sector vocabulary for the past 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. But it is now that when the pandemic has hit, we are reiterating those. So we are saying what we are measuring are not only economic indicators, we are not only measuring income and wealth, we are measuring social indicators, which Priya talked about, we are measuring environmental indicators, which I will come to, and we are measuring well-being indicators. So it is much more than just having a lot of money in the bank and spending your day-to-day livelihood. I'll give you a small example. The textile industry, the handloom industry in the especially in the tribal belts in many of the states have been quite vibrant in terms of, you know, the bordering states of Orissa, from where the traders come, they take orders, or there are artisan entrepreneurs or weaver entrepreneurs, and they earn, this is pre-COVID I'm saying, they have been earning probably say 30, 40, 50,000 per month sitting in their homes. So my question is, and my question to them was also that, would you like to go out and expand? And they said no. That is because they work in their own time. They can take care of their family and their children. Because it is a creative pursuit, they have their own schedules, which we will not probably understand who do a 10 to 5 job. And the well-being is very high. The sense of security is very high. They are leading a full life with 30, 40, 50,000. And they have the dignity and they have the business. So this is a very small example pre-COVID of what we are looking at today in terms of livelihood, sustainability, well-being, resilience, etc. So I really think that those definitions and those concepts need to be understood better than what we are doing today. Secondly, if we look at the handicraft sector did not start as a handicraft sector. When we enter the DC handicraft, we see a huge photograph of Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay. Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay was not a handicraft person. She was not a creative person. She was a social reformer who worked with Tagore, who worked with Nehru at the same time. And she identified the handicraft sector or the hand skill sector as a sector for creating employment and sustainable livelihood and empowering socially, economically, and culturally the people of India. And those have been very much in the policy from the time of independence. But sadly, what we are discussing today and what Suman is also asking is very pertinent, because yes, we are still asking the same questions, we are still talking about the same challenges, and we are still sort of having to deal with the same kind of problems that were fully addressed if you look at the policies that were developed in 1947 and beyond that. So it is not that things have not happened. It is not that, as Priya mentioned, there are several entrepreneurs, there are several enterprises, there are fantastic grassroots initiatives who are doing brilliant work, but then those have not been consolidated in a mainstream manner to say that this is a very, very important economic sector which can really contribute to sustainable development economically, socially, culturally, and politically for the people in India. So that I think has been a big gap. And I would again go back to what I was talking about, the measuring indicators, because post-COVID, I think we have started looking at, thankfully, we have started looking at those indicators, and we have started asking some of the right questions to sort of build on the challenges that we all faced individually or in small groups or in small enterprises at the grassroots. But now probably at the policy level or at the program level, it is being looked at more holistically, or we have more leverage to be able to really address that. The third thing that have really sort of impacted me, and I keep sharing this with everyone, is the recent talks by Professor Yunus, who has been repeatedly saying, and this has made me think a lot, because as I said, I have headed ICA and I did not come from the craft sector. So I really had to understand the business aspect and the ecosystem even before I understood what that craft was. So what Professor Yunus has been harping on, and I think we all have been talking about it in different ways, but not probably in such a well-versed manner, is that the direction in which the economy is going has failed. It is not the right direction. And instead of trying to mend that, instead of trying to put things back in order, we should start doing something completely different. which is to say that the rural economy in India is a parallel economy. It is not an economy that supports the urban economy. We have seen that during migration, all the issues that happened in India, and we who work in the grassroots with the handicraft sector have seen that very closely when we have worked with them during COVID and pre-COVID to really see how mobilized, how interested, how motivated they are to be able to do their own things, sitting in their own villages, doing the creative pursuits, and being able to access the market in the right way, and being mentored in the right way, and having the ecosystem that is desired for them. Which is not to say that they cannot come to a mainstream management institute and study, but then if we consider it as a parallel economy, there has to be policies, programs, and strategies to be able to bring them to a level where they are able to become entrepreneurs in the changing scenario of the world, which a lot of people are doing. Again, having said that, some interesting observations are, if you look at some states, say Gujarat, you will see numerous successful artisan entrepreneurs. You will see numerous successful artisan enterprises. You will see some of the leading successful initiatives are from Gujarat. Why? Now, if you ask so anywhere where success stories are being shared, you will find that Gujarat is coming up as one of the major states in this sector where you have maximum success stories. Why? Because that state by principally are business minded. I will also draw this example to another sector. This is a sector in Benares, in UP, very close to Benares, called Mubarakpur, where the weavers, they had a market of their own, they had a brand of their own, but they got overshadowed by the Banarasi, the big Banarasi industry for many years. They had thrown away their handlooms and all that, thinking that they will never be able to again revive. So we did a very small initiative from ICA to revive their business. In 3 years, they became a 50 lakh business, a producer company with artisans working together and a major supplier of Fab India. Now, they were all from the villages. We did not do anything very innovative that was not done in the field before. But why it worked is, again, the reason why so many enterprises have worked in Gujarat, other than the focus it has got, is because they are by nature entrepreneurial. They are business communities. So this whole thing of our country focusing on patronage in the name of business, and actually states and communities who are by themselves business minded as communities, they have the cohesive understanding of what business, profit, investment, capital, everything is. So I think that is a major area which by nature, by default, makes them more competitive and more successful in these areas. But again, coming back to the rest of the sector in the rest of the country, if this has to be achieved, then a lot of exposure, a lot of education, not as in only education in school, but education, and a lot of policy changes have to be done, which has to shift from patronage in the name of schemes and whatever the government is doing, because it has finally remained there. So finally, the final point that I would like to make is in the scheme of development, I'm shifting a little bit from the handicraft sector, but I think it's important for sustainability. In the scheme of the development sector, if you look at the evolution of development through time, India being a colonized country, they basically, the whole concept of development was westernization and emulation of the West. So technology, modernization, etc., all these came in. And then eventually, if you look at the evolution and the history, then it came to people's economy and people's participation and people's ownership and people's leadership. And finally, today, what Priya was also talking about, it has come to sustainability. Now, if you look at, and there has been a huge hue and cry about not only the sustainability of the businesses, but also sustainability as a practice. Now, if we look at sustainability as a practice, you will see that the culture of use and throw was not there in our culture traditionally. The use and throw culture is a Western culture, which we have imbibed. But traditionally, our handicraft sector, our hand skill sector rather, was sustainable. And the way we have grown up, or our earlier generations, our mothers, their mothers have grown up, it was a completely sustainable society. And handicrafts is integrally linked to lifestyle. And handicraft is business today because it was business in the past also. So it was not that handicraft at some point was a creative pursuit and today it became business. It was always a business in some form or the other. So having said this, there has to be a paradigm change in how we look at sustainability, how we look at the sector, and how I would say this is a strength of South Asia as a whole, and how South Asia can actually make this competitive for itself to be able to stand as a business leader in this sector in the world as a whole. So these were few points that I wanted to make. Thank you. And I'm happy to expand.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Madhura. Very interesting, insights into sustainability and resilience and some of the things, entrepreneurial pursuit and not really patronage. I think, patronage seriously is a problem for anything entrepreneurial, not essentially handicraft. It is the problem if you really look at SME as a sector in our country.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised how the SME sector has survived in spite of our government being around. So this is not really any ecosystem. This is I don't know. I'll probably borrow Priya's word, regressive, or that kind of a system we have. It is actually extractive, regressive system. But in spite of that, this is the MSMEs have done so well. So yeah, patronage is a serious problem. So we'll get back on that. So now I go to Rymbai. Rymbai is probably a very interesting story, and as Northeast kind of remains away from our imagination almost all the time, as to what happens there.
Hello.
So, yeah, Rymbai, can you hear?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello.
I can hear you. So if you can please share your experience, what have you been doing, and how were things during this COVID, pre-COVID, and now?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank this panel, and thanks to all the speakers before me. Thanks to the IIM Kolkata Innovation Park for mentoring me for this nearly a year. So my company, my startup, the EriWeave, it deals in manufacturing and promotes the handspun aerosol yarn and handwoven fabric from the locally available aerosol cocoon. It was founded in March 2019 and formally launched our brand in March 2022. So we founded EriWeave with a mission to enhance the livelihood of our people through agriculture, aerosol spinning, and handloom weaving, and also to revive handloom weaving, spinning, and natural dyeing, and also to add value to the aerosol cocoon instead of selling it raw. Because in Meghalaya, Rymbai district of Meghalaya, its climate is very fit for rearing aerosol cocoon. But then this cocoon used to go outside Meghalaya.
Rymbai, are you still there?
I think some issues with the audio.
Rymbai, what I would suggest that you disconnect your video. I think hopefully that should work.
Yes, I'm so sorry. The connectivity is. Yeah. Yes. Is it okay now? Can I continue?
Yes, it is. Yes, please continue.
Yes. When started in 2019, we faced lots of challenge in like getting the people trust, and then building a team, and also capital investment. So, but then we can overcome all these challenges, and now our like startup is 3 years old, and we still continue. And also with the mentorship from the IIM Kolkata, we start growing up our startup. Okay, that's all.
Okay.
Can continue.
All right. Thank you. So now I have a question for. I first will go to Ankit and then probably go to Priya. So we kind of keep hearing, let's say every micro and small kind of a business. If you really look at China, if you really look at Germany, if you really look at Italy, people who have done really well in small and micro, particularly SME, so to say. You will see that, one, of course, is the policy support, etc., etc. But there is a very active, very dynamic, intermediary sector, which is what, we kind of keep calling them, all sorts of, we actually abuse them. We say dalal hai, koi kuch hai, something or whatever. But come to think, even the strategic management professors, they kind of came to the conclusion that unless you have a very, active, and of course, again, to Priya's point, it should not be an extractive system. It reasonably may be transparent or whatever. Unless we have that, we have a serious problem of growing this sector. And honestly, now with my almost like 12, 13 years into the game on the ground, I'm kind of realizing that yet without this sector being developed, this intermediary sector being developed, we are in a serious problem. So Ankit, your response to that, what is that you are saying? Do you see that ecosystem evolving, that the intermediate, do you see that is evolving? Do you see yourself as a potential intermediary, over a period of time? So your experience or your thought on that.
As Suman, you have said that like in various other countries, we have seen such kind of small enterprises going up to very large level. And this, I have also spoken on various other forums also, that I also see this thing as a problem in India. Like the enterprise which I am running, a kind of enterprise, I haven't seen growing such kind of, or as we call as social startups. None of the social startup has grown too large to a level we call as now unicorn. So of course, few of my investors ask us whether you want to become unicorn. I say I want to become like Tata. So unicorn is something you may become a unicorn with like anything, but it is a something imaginary kind of a status. But I always feel that this is not there in India. But with startups like Shoegaro and various other startups who are coming up, and startups are only able to do these kind of activities where they connect these local crafts, local artisans to the world. Like here, what happens, like these artisans have their own sort of a like traders were there. They used to come and they buy from them, and then they move to various parts of the country and they sell. But because now e-commerce is there and all those things are there, these artisans, all the artisans across all craft sectors, they are not educated. And I may be wrong because I have exposure to various footwear art clusters in Rajasthan and few in Karnataka in Hubli district. There, what I have seen is they belong to majorly backward communities. So, in last 2 decades, what has happened that they have lost their market connect because of the excessive mechanization, e-commerce coming in and all that, and they are not educated. And now next generation is not adopting. And this is the problem. And what I feel is each and every city, especially in Uttar Pradesh, what I see, each and every city has its own craft, its own one unique product, which is there, which they are working on in that city. And if a certain kind of structure like Shoegaro comes in, and we have built now we have built a marketplace for B2B sector for footwear. Karigar Mandi is its name. So if such kind of things comes in and connect these artisans, now what you see is only connection is not required right now. They have lost, they have to compete with organized players in the market. They need some kind of advanced training. They need some kind of advanced hand tool. They may not be needing automatic machinery because otherwise the employment will not be there. And in footwear especially, everything cannot be made through a fully automatic machine. So they need some advanced hand tools and all these things, and they need credit. So all these things need to be provided to them. Recently, I went to a very big marketing. It's a very big event last week in Uttar Pradesh. I went there, and I was offered, if you connect with our department, and we'll give 5,000 rupees to all the artisans. So means I told them that already we are giving credit, and this 5,000 will not be of any help. It's just be like government has distributed 5,000, and your responsibility is over. So I discussed with them what all we are doing. Government is always inviting me. Government is always trying to understand what I'm doing, but they're not able to do. But they always invite me to listen what I'm doing, and they wanted to do. But it is like, so I always go there, and I'll always tell them what I'm doing and all that, and what they should implement. In UP, we have one district, one product policy. So these things are there. But you see, startups need to come up, and there is a huge possibility of business. See, I have seen it in my business. Very huge scope is there. In terms of business, because I'm also a businessman, so business comes in, and in all, whatever I discuss, business comes in. Like, see what uniqueness is there with these arts. If you go to a factory in footwear sector, you may not be able to order your assortment of footwear. They will say, we will only give one color, one design. At least you need to buy 50, 60 pairs or 100 pairs. Artisan will give you 8 pairs. Such a flexibility for a new businessman like me. When I started, Artisan said that I'll give you 8 pairs of one color, one design, and he always also offered that I can give you 4 pairs of one color and 4 pairs of another color for same design. So for displaying the products on the e-commerce website, it's a huge flexibility for me. So all new upcoming entrepreneurs need to understand this, and I have discussions with few other of my friends who are doing such kind of businesses, running these businesses. They all have the same experience. So this thing needs to be like, we need to make aware to the new generation who are trying to find out new business ideas, what they can do. I always say that you can find any business idea in your own city. Each and every Indian city has. Like, footwear is manufactured in at least 80 cities have small or big footwear manufacturing clusters, these handmade footwear. So there is a huge possibility in each and every city, I say. So that's.
Thank you, Ankit. So I come to you, Priya. Now, this middleman is not accepted. Policy guys are very upset with Bicholias. They don't like it at all. But then what do you do? Because come to think of it, all along in the last couple of years, everywhere you go, buyers are very happy. They want to work with them, but they come back and say, you know what? We are very happy, but we need one person to work. Now, how do we create? So where is the solution? So I don't know. So if we have 3,000 artisans or artists, etc., but the buyer wants 1 or 2, so then how do you solve this? So what's your take on that?
Suman, I can't speak to that specific challenge in the nuance that you expect me to share, but I can say this, that I completely agree with you that the middleman has always been there. The middle person has always been there. Enterprises like mine or Ankit's are also middle people at the end of the day. So we need to recognize that the middle function that we perform is integral in the value chain. Perhaps the middle person will change from being that traditional middle person to, say, Ankit's company, or to my company, or to somebody else's company. But the middle function is critical in more ways than one, and we can't ignore it. So that is one piece. So even coming to your point of intermediaries, as it were, intermediaries now more than ever are critical in being able to anchor the ecosystem. Because if everybody becomes a retailer, And we were told for 200 MA, the first thing we were told, Ari, why don't you set up a platform so that artisans can sell directly? So we did a little mini research and we got all artisans to ask them, listen, do you actually want another platform? And they said, yaar, kitne platforms mein hum log, we have to fill out data. And that is not an artisan problem, that's an enterprise problem as well. So there are 10,000 marketplaces, you have to fill forms, you have to upload your own thing, there is no guarantee that sales will happen. So even when we are designing platforms for the future, what is the value add that you're giving the enterprise? To give you a very small example, now one of the enterprises who took the survey recently reached out to us saying, Priya, I've been working with this artisan or entrepreneur for the last 10 years. He has got an order right now from Fab India, but he does not have working capital and he needs X amount of money. Is there a possibility that you can make this money accessible and available to him? Because otherwise he'll lose the order. He doesn't have money for the raw materials, but the order is signed and whatever, but there's no advances that come in. Now, what we need to actually advocate for when we are talking to the big companies, ki bhai advances de do, because we don't have working capital in the system. For the sector to grow, where do you get money for the raw materials? Raw material prices are increasing day in and day out. That is one piece of the problem. Even now when we are building social businesses, the social business can no longer remain one retail platform. It has to serve multiple functions of the intermediary, which is also perhaps giving access to working capital. It could mean giving access to, say digital empowerment. It could mean giving access to, what Madhura talked about, the well-being, to make sure that they're getting living wages, to make sure that they're getting access to bank accounts. Because Suman, whether I hate to bust your myth, this sector is actually in many ways women driven. And that is the truth. Women don't have collateral. Women work out of homes. Women do not have bank accounts. It's their husband's accounts that they use. Now, if they have to become participating producers in this ecosystem, you have to also address the challenges that a woman faces sitting, weaving a basket at home or weaving, what is something in Meghalaya, for example. These are everyday challenges. And if we as enterprises also can serve the function of an intermediary and perform that middle function, because that middleman, what did he do? He would give the working capital to that artisan. Na? Can we not do the same? Or can we not convince the investors that the problem is not with us? You guys haven't been innovative enough to come up with products for us. That is also where we need to call out the system. We need to call out policy and say, listen, the demand is there. You're not giving us the products that we want to use. You can't take a product from healthcare and education and give it to a sector which is so decentralized and, to Madhura's point, so, operates in dispersed rural areas across the country. And these are also people who are actually happy doing exactly what they're doing, but all they need is certain touch points which allow them to also become aspirational producers as well as consumers of the future. So tomorrow, is it wrong for us to believe that artisan wants to buy a motorbike? What is wrong with that? Don't we want our motorbikes and our gadi, bangla, whatever, but we are okay with paying the artisan very little. What is wrong in paying living wages? In today's day and time, after COVID, we all have lost people in our lives. Yeah, what are we working towards? As human beings also. Is it too much to ask to run a responsible business? And to Madhura's point, I completely agree with her. This is not about fixing the system. This is about creating a new system. And that new system has to be created by people like us, honestly. And to give you another example, to the point of unicorns. So one of the articles, which I would recommend everybody read, was something that I came across in Boston because I kept looking for these alternatives to the existing status quo. And the article said, zebras fix what unicorns break. And I was like, ye kya cheez hai? So, and I read the article and it really talked about, cooperation versus competition. It talked about mutualism versus, also knowing when to say enough. Because not everybody will become a unicorn, and you shouldn't have to become a unicorn. That should not be our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal as business people is to make sure that our enterprise is self-sustainable, that the people who are working for us are happy, that they are taken care of, that their needs are taken care of, and they're growing with the company. That is what a good business actually does. And that is how we need to lead our way. And 200M is a Zebra enterprise, like officially a Zebra enterprise, because we believe in those values. For us, that is a manifesto. So for us, we will not, and we are working towards ideas like worker ownership. We are championing those kind of ideas, employee ownership, things like that, because we're like, yeah, what are we going to take all this? CEO ban ke kitne saal, how long do you want to be a CEO of a company? Don't you want other things to do? Like, don't you want to go climb mountains or, have other interests and, have a well-rounded life? And that should be available to everybody in our close-knit community. That could be our employees and that could be our friends or our peers. And which is also why collaboration becomes critical at this point, because we can't work in a silo where, oh shit, I'm not going to tell him this, or I'm not going to say this to that person. The more we share right now, the faster the sector will grow. Otherwise, in these little silos that the sector has been working in, we can't, accelerate the kind of growth that we all want for our own enterprises, for our communities, because once we lose our skill sets, once the artisans decide to become Uber drivers, we have nothing left to champion. Then we have to train people and set up schools to train new people. Who has that kind of bandwidth? And just to also speak to innovation ecosystems, I mean, given that this is an innovation, this is IIM Kolkata, this is a lot of the frameworks coming back to even business frameworks. I'd like to understand in a lot of the mentorship spaces and intermediate spaces, what are the kind of frameworks that we're using? Are these frameworks like business model canvas that kisi aur ne, gave to us, which does not apply to us? It really does not apply to us. Can we build new frameworks for our country, for our people, for our communities, for our kind of businesses? Those don't exist. So we have to take the lead in building out a lot of those kind of frameworks that are customized to our communities, to every even district that has a different craft. There is no one size fits all solution for the sector. That is all I'm going to end with.
Thank you, Priya. Madhura, let's say, we keep hearing that this sector is informal, it's too small, they're kind of spread all over the place. A bunch of people, maybe somebody is self-employed, etc., etc. So this, kind of fragmentation, is that a problem or is that a strength? And let's say if we need to, do you think, or do you think that's like a potential solution? Let's say if we ever have a Hindustan Unilever kind of an organization evolving within the craft sector, so then it sells pretty much everything that the craft sector has to offer. So what's your thought on that? In terms of the industry, so this sector becoming or evolving as an industry which can support many people, sustainable income, resilience, etc., by way of doing this kind of a model, which itself kind of it's a fairly stable model. So what's your take on that?
Okay, that's a complicated question. So just to start with what you, the second last question that you asked me about if a large corporate was to come in and work in this sector or support this sector, then could it turn into an industrial? I'll interpret it like that. That is what you meant, right? So I'll give you a small example, which may not be answering exactly your question, but something to the effect. Firstly, we all have to understand that this sector, be it dispersed, diverse, one product, 10 product, whatever it is huge in scale and it is extremely diverse. It is much more diverse than you can imagine, than we all can imagine working in this sector for 20 years. The diversity, the specialization, and the skill base is so huge that it is very, very difficult for one platform or one organization or one company or one industry to come forward and support this sector. I do not think, with my little experience that I have in the field, I do not think that will work. Second, middlemen is not a bad thing that we have been saying, to which many people look at us with a lot of frowned eyebrows and say, what are you saying? They are all exploited and all that. But the middlemen and the middle people have been the bread and butter of this industry. So we'll be there, we will not be there tomorrow. Those traders, those people will be there because they not only support those artists for their business, they support those artists for capital, they support those artists for health, they support those artists for everything that the government is trying to provide, but they are not being able to, probably because they are not being able to reach out. So having said that, because I worked in ICA and I very closely mentored Craftmark, and I'm still on its governing body, I will share some of the very interesting examples that I had there, which is to do with what you asked. And that is also because in ICA had a very interesting model, has a very interesting model. ICA is a not-for-profit. It has designed and it runs a certification program for handicraft, which is called Craftmark, which has been running now for the last 14, 15 years with a lots of failure for different reasons, but a lot of success. But I am personally, of all that I have seen here and internationally, I'm extremely impressed by the simplicity of the process, which is I think the key to the success of any of these kinds of models or schemes in India, just because of the sheer diversity that we are dealing with. And I think bringing something down to that simple level is very, very difficult. Now, because we ran Craftmark, what we did was, what Craftmark does was, I'm not running ICA anymore. What Craftmark did was, it interacted with the markets, international, national, and it interacted with the artists, the artisan enterprises, the entrepreneurs who are running artisan organizations, not necessarily artisans themselves, and they facilitated some of the services that they got by being a Craftmark member. Now, these services were business training, these services were different kinds of product development, creative this, that, and this service also linked to market facilitation and market linkage. So and Craftmark was also open to giving certification to big company platforms, which also procured from the artisans to be able to say that they are authentic handmade craft products. Craftmark certifies authentic handmade craft products, which are made by the artisans directly, who get a fair wage and a fair income, and who do not have any occupational health and hazard in their working space. Again, in respect to how the cultural aspect, I mean, the cultural way of life in India, because that does not match with the international market. And we had to deal and negotiate with the requirements and the demands of the international market in terms of fairness, occupational health and hazard, social standard, this, that. So one important thing is, so this is an interesting example actually, where Aditya Birla Group actually approached ICA because they decided that many of their brands, including Raymond, this, that, they have already started taking products from the artisans and they are not being able to manage it. So they came to ICA because ICA has always worked and still works as a technical organization. It is a very small team which is very knowledgeable in the sector specifically, and it understands the entire supply chain value chain of the sector by the kind of people that it has gathered. And that is how it runs Craftmark. So it came to ICA, and I remember giving a series of presentations throughout the day in Bangalore for a number of big brands under Aditya Birla Group. And the very interesting points that came up, other than the fact that they really thought that they need a body like ICA to be able to train them on what to ask for, where to procure from, what to procure, what will work out, what will not, and the cost implications of, because they are large scale businesses and they have it is not the same as a craft retail or a boutique which is selling craft, is that, for example, say they have a design and they have a shirt which they want to produce in X amount, and they want a kind of print for which they have gone to Gujarat to get it printed by Ajrak printers. Now there's a cost of how Ajrak is printed, and it depends on how that process works, which is complicated. Whereas for exactly the same result, they could have gone to the block printers of Jaipur and got it done at a much lower price, having a much better result. Now, this is a very technical thing. And for this, they needed people like ICA to come and work, not interfering in their designs, but to facilitate what will work best for their business. So to identify the craft, to identify the process, to say what will work and what won't, to say which artisans can make this and which artisans can't. I mean, there are no artisans who can't if it's printing, but then the way the artisans in Ajrak will print those will cost much higher than the way the block printers in Jaipur would print those. So all these nuances were very, very very micro level things. Now they could have chosen, or probably they already have. There were two choices that they had. One was to hire ICA as an agency. The other was to get technical people in their teams who would continuously work on this to tell them how their business would run. So that is one model in which it has worked or is working, or right now how they are going about it, I don't know. But we had several of these kinds of issues. Now, the second is international market. Any international market, our handicrafts have a huge international market. But why can't they export? Because first, regulation and all the paperwork and everything that are not there. Secondly, international markets, export unit cost is actually lesser than unit cost of products if you sell them to Fab India. Always. It is not the other way around. So in case of exports, when an export and an organization like ICA, because of the kind of Craftmark members who were premium, as Priya mentioned, to be able to give them the right value for their right effort and the product and the process. So they chose to go to the conscious buyers who would say that, yes, I would look for a specific value, a specific quality, and I am ready to pay a specific price for this level of quality and this standard. Now, when those markets came in, they wanted Craftmark to facilitate, because they didn't have the bandwidth to go individually, even if there is a collective, even if there are not 10,000 artisans working in a sector, but even if there are 5 collectives, they do not have the bandwidth to go to those 5 collectives and check out which collective will work and things like that. They have 1 person probably, or 2 persons in the entire country to facilitate the export from India to, say, an European country or US, like many other countries that they take from. They take from Afghanistan, Nepal, Pakistan, most of the South Asian countries, and they have similar challenges. So what they did was, they said that you tell me, I will tell you what I need. So they will not tell me that they need Jaipur rugs, or they need daris of Salavas in Jodhpur, or they need juti of Rajasthan. They will say, I need this footwear, or I need this carpet, or I need this kind of thing. And you are the knowledge body who will tell me which are the best artist groups from which I procure. And the certification acts as a safeguard for the interests of the artisans and the interests of the market or the seller, so that neither of them fall into the trouble of, the unethical issues of the market. So they paid a price to Craftmark for that facilitation, and the artisans did the business directly with the markets. So there was still a facilitation, but the facilitation was one of knowledge. Now, in many cases, when this started, the artisans, because it is a business, you cannot train them first and then give them the market. It always sort of works parallel. And the artists or the artisans never have the bandwidth to actually sort of address that. So many of the orders failed, but at the same time, when the artisans gave those orders, and ICA or Craftmark, whatever, worked as a facilitator in the middle, the Craftmark took the responsibility of actually ensuring the quality of the product. So if the buyer from France has said a 1 centimeter border, it is a 1 centimeter border. It cannot be a 1.1 centimeter. And the artists would just do 1.1, 1.2, 1.2. ठीक ही तो है, ये तो हो गया, मतलब वही तो लग रहा है, and it will not work. So it is also a part of training, but at the same time, there is also a negotiation involved in educating the buyers on what these, if you are looking for the value and the ethical ground to source products directly from the artists or the artisans and get that level of quality, you also have to understand that what this craft is, what the process is, what the value chain is, and how it works, because that adds value to the final product that you are taking. And it's not just the materials or not just the time that the artisan is giving. So having to negotiate that by educating the market and also training the artisan to say, you have to do exactly what has been told to you. If you do not do that, you lose the business. So in many cases like this, there are many enterprises or single artisans or artisan enterprises or NGOs who directly work with artisans who have been able to be successful and has got linked to those markets directly eventually. After 3 years, 4 years, they have been probably exporting to those markets now for 10 years, 20 years. But at the same time, there are many who have just slipped out, who have failed because they could not maintain that level of quality or that level of whatever was needed by the market. So that challenge existed, and wherever there were middle people who could facilitate that worked very well. And I know of a number of artisans who have been able to do that directly. So it really depends on, I think, the entrepreneurial quality and the ecosystem that that particular artisan or artisan group is based in. Third, if I am allowed to take other examples also, because again, we worked as a network. So say, for example, Fabindia. Fabindia started as a social venture where they actually created, mentored, and established artisan organizations. And there are many still, and to whom Fabindia gave capital, and they mentored like financially, technically, in every way. They incubated, and then they left them on their own. And in many cases, many of those have sort of died out. But in many cases, many of those are still running, and Fabindia still sources products from them, which work independently. They got out of Fabindia, but they are independent businesses. But Fabindia still holds a major part of safeguarding their business in terms of ordering from them. If you look at a more recent example, say GoCoop, which is an e-commerce. I'm giving these examples because I've worked with these people closely and I have seen the challenges that they have gone through. GoCoop started as a marketplace. It is probably the first online marketplace in India for crafts, and not just e-commerce. It created a marketplace, but actually for the handicrafts, at least in East and in North, I don't think they have been able to really bring the artisans to the marketplace for them to be able to independently sell on the marketplace. They have been doing the e-commerce very well, but probably in many other places, they have been able to make that successful. So I think it really depends on the diversity, the complexity, and the cultural scenario, and the layers of supply chain that are there just in one craft for all these to fit in place. That's it.
Yeah, thank you, Madhura. So there are quite a few questions that have come from the participants, but I would pick up one of the questions really because we don't have time. So this question, I'll take it to Priya. So it talks about how can we make sustainability appealing to youngsters?
You say sustainability. What do you sustainable? Does it mean financial sustainability, business sustainability, climate sustainability, well-being sustainability? You'll have to be very specific when you talk about sustainability. But
so he talks about in the craft sector. So let's say if you want to make traditional craft, etc., attractive, to the youngsters, and sustainability being the pitch, then how do you really make it?
Well, follow 200 million artisans on our Instagram page. You'll know how we are making it sustainable for all enterprises and craft people. But Great. Essentially, I think to give a more serious answer, I think one of the things I'm beginning to realize in India, and this is really coming back to the yoga argument, we have to really position and to really talk about what we have and take like a bird's eye view, because I know a lot of when we work with craft, sometimes we are so close to it. We don't really realize what the value is, why we are doing it, why somebody else might be interested, and so on and so forth. I think somewhere we all need to take a step back and see where the world is moving. and really connect and talk about craft in the larger global context, because we all are moving towards, a way of life where we want to consume less. We want to be mindful. We are careful about what we put into our bodies, all of that. And craft, it embodies that ethos. If we are doing that, then we can talk about it. I think somewhere we have to accept it ourselves that this is truly unique, and in some ways it is bringing value to our lives and to each enterprise or anybody who wants to become an enterprise as well. I think it's really critical to invest that extra bit of budgets below, whatever it is, or have a model which does in some ways amplify the inherent value of craft. It doesn't matter beyond a point. Yes, the product is critical and you need to sort of, but I think somewhere you need to be able to tell very, very good stories. I think we're telling good stories. We're not telling good stories. We're not telling the spectrum of creativity to build a narrative. Now need to start doing is build narratives in enterprises. And that is not just for 200 million, that is for every craft-based enterprise. I think the only making craft is sexy. We just need to position it as sexy and start believing in it first ourselves. Move away from that whole patronage and charity narrative. Please don't use words like poverty alleviation and, how we are saviors of the artisans. Nobody is saving anybody else. We are all here and we are all part of an interconnected ecosystem. If any of them upar niche, if we go, then the other loses out. So I feel once we recognize that we are part of an interconnected system, let's then build stories that are about that interconnectedness.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, thank you. So there is one more question that I want to kind of take up quickly with Rymbai, because this is probably pertinent to you. Is this the question is, how do you really make a craft sector dynamic when where there is multiple resource challenges, and which is geographically also kind of So Rymbai, do you want to kind of share your experience on that, because you are doing it sitting in Meghalaya and trying to do with working with women, trying to create an ecosystem there?
Yes, so can you repeat the question? Your voice is breaking. I could not hear it.
Okay, so the question says, how do you really go about creating an ecosystem or creating a craft-based enterprise, set of enterprises where there is a serious resource crunch, not only including geographical, distances, etc. So that is what the question is. So I thought probably you would be able to answer that better than anybody else.
Yes. When we started this venture, first of all, we start with the awareness in women. We give them awareness like about the objectives of our mission, the objective of our startup. So when we give them awareness, they understand, and we try to make them understand that how together we can uplift. We can enhance the livelihood of each other if we work together as a team. So that was how we overcome our first challenge.
Okay. Thank you.
Hope that is you get the answer.
Yes. And how did you mobilize the support from government institutions, etc.? Is there anything that you want to talk about it?
Yes, through this through the team, through this society. Yeah, we have one society. Through this society, we try to reach out to the government department. We try to reach out to the department to together collaborate to the women. Then we get subsidies, like bindings and all, and distribute to women. So that, because we work in a decentralized way. We don't work at the center. We don't have a production center. Each weaver has their own tool that the society help to procure it, buy from the society fund, and we get it as a grant from the government department. So that is how we go. But one of the panelists said that we have to maintain the size and the quantity of the products. So we need to have one collection center that we have now, a collection center where we give the size of the fabric. Then we do the dyeing at the same place. Then the dyed yarn we distribute to the weavers. So in that way, we maintain the size, we maintain the quality of the product.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rymbai. So thanks, Madhura, Ankit, Priya, and Rymbai for your time. I think it was really interesting. There are a lot of questions, but unfortunately, we ran out of time. We did not even realize because these are narrative-based. So I guess we probably will have an opportunity later. Request Tanushree to take over and do the formal closing, please.
Incredible lead. I'm sure everyone out here has been enough and gearing up to explore the idea and move ahead. Thank you so much for actively participating in this webinar. Thank you to all our speakers, Priya ma'am, Madhura ma'am, Ankit and Rymbai, to explain things so clearly and taking us to the journey of entrepreneurship. Thank you, Suman sir, as always, for weaving the tapestry of this webinar so beautifully and taking out your time at such a short notice. And lastly, I would like to conclude by quoting Leo Tolstoy: "Art is not a handicraft, it is the transmission of feeling the artist has experienced." Thank you, everyone. Please stay safe and may you and your family be blessed. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.